personnel are farmers, religious leaders, and inconvenient minorities. Stalin establishes his own secret police force, and slave labor camps are set up all over the Soviet Union. 125 camps, 10 million slaves. On the backs of his slaves, Stalin builds an industrial Russia geared for conflict with the West. 1934, Stalin plots to liquidate his opposition within the party. He confides to his friends to choose the victim, to prepare the blow with care, to satisfy an implacable vengeance, and then go to bed. There is nothing sweeter in the world. On the right is Sergei Kirov. Stalin uses the assassination of Kirov as the excuse for the great purges which claimed thousands of lives. The first to go, Lenin's close associates. Zinoviev executed. Kamenev executed. Radek executed. Pyatakov executed. Leon Trotsky comments from Mexico,
"There are no crime in history more terrible in intention or execution than the Moscow trials of Zinoviev, Kamenev, and Radek Pyatakov. What is now my principal task? To reveal the truth, to show and to demonstrate that the true criminals hide under the cloak of the accusers. What will be the next step in this direction? The creation of an American and European and subsequent also an international commission of inquiry, composed of people who incontestably enjoy authority and public confidence."
Trotsky's future? Assassination. In the Kremlin, the planned murders continue. The cream of the officer corps, condemned without witnesses or defense and shot within 48 hours. Literary giant Maxim Gorky dies under mysterious circumstances. One of those benefiting most from the purges is Nikita Khrushchev, now first secretary of the Moscow Party organization. He proclaims, "They, the wormy trash, the Trotskyites, they raised their criminal hands against Stalin. Hail the greatest genius of mankind who leads us victoriously toward communism, our own Stalin." Apparently based on Kirov's reform project, the Stalin Constitution of 1936 provides for universal suffrage and direct election to the Supreme Soviet, in theory, the legislative branch of the Soviet government. In practice, it is actually a rubber-stamped cheering section for Stalin. As for the election, there's only one set of candidates, those nominated by the Communist Party. Voting with Premier Stalin are Minister of State Security's Secret Police Nikolai Yezhov, Minister of War Clement Voroshilov, and Minister of Foreign Affairs Vyacheslav Molotov. By himself, Nikita Khrushchev. Everyone, everywhere is ordered to vote. The penalties for failure to vote are severe. They involve loss of work, loss of social position, or imprisonment in a slave labor camp. Supposedly, 99% of the people cast their ballots for the one-party ticket. Stalin announces that socialism has been attained in the USSR. Actually, the government has become everyone's boss. Workers are forbidden to strike. Agriculture is finally collectivized. By 1939, through the tactic of united and popular fronts, the communist conspiracy is truly worldwide. In the United States, a well-financed communist apparatus insinuates its way into American life. Through the Communist International, based in Moscow, Stalin controls the activities of communists everywhere. He establishes a network of spies to steal for communist misuse the fruit produced under the system of free men. In Paris, communists maneuver their way into the French government. In Paris, communists maneuver their way into the French government. Posing as enemies of fascism, the Reds are able to gain many converts. In Yan'an, China, Mao Tse-tung is firmly established in the north and awaits his opportunity to take over the whole country. In Moscow, instead of the withering away of the state promised by Karl Marx, the state has become a monster, wholly dependent for its power on the Red Army and secret police. Despite the 20-odd years of Soviet brutality, the objective of the Marxist Communist Manifesto, the world revolution, has not occurred. And Stalin still waits for the chance to spill communism over the borders of the Soviet Union. His opportunity comes with the rise of a rival tyranny in Nazi Germany. In early 1939, the British and French negotiate in Moscow for a mutual defense pact against Hitler. Stalin instructs his subordinates, words have no relation to action. Otherwise, what kind of diplomacy is it? Words are one thing, actions another. Words are a mask for concealment of bad deeds. Sincere diplomacy is no more possible than dry water or wooden iron. Even as the fruitless talks continue, Nazi Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop arrives in Moscow to discuss with Commissar of Foreign Affairs Maxim Litvinov a non-aggression pact between Hitler and Stalin. On August 23, 1939, the tyrants are united. Hitler is free to strike. So is Stalin. September 1st, Germany attacks Poland. Two days later, Britain and France declare war, but are powerless to help the gallant Poles. The end comes quickly. But not before the Red Army has invaded the hapless country from the east. Communism has at last advanced outside the Soviet Union and quickly provides the world with a sample of its tactics in occupied territory. Tens of thousands of prisoners are deported as slavery in Soviet Siberia. As the Polish people suffer, the Red propaganda machine goes to work.
Із великої Москви, з великого будинку, із хати Червона армія. Вона нас оборонила від усього. Вона не дорожила, що покинула сім'ї, батьків, жінок, дітей. Орлами летіли на наші землі і боронили.
The new secretary of the Ukrainian Communist Party, Khrushchev, and Marshal Semen Timoshenko take over. Meanwhile, Soviet firing squads are busy. In the Katyn forest, some 10,000 Polish officers and intellectual leaders are slaughtered by the communists and buried in mass graves. The atrocities in our film are not pleasant, but the world must be reminded again and again of the inhumanity to man that is communism and was Nazism. After years of vicious attacks on Hitlerism as the scourge of mankind, Stalin now declares it cannot be denied that it was France and Britain who attacked Germany, thus assuming responsibility for the present war. Molotov is a frequent visitor to Berlin, appeasing Hitler with food and supplies, declaring it is criminal to wage a war against Hitlerism, camouflaged as a fight for democracy. Taking advantage of the pact with Hitler, Russia begins a series of systematic attacks on its tiny neighbors. Finland is invaded on November 30th, 1939. At first, the heroic Finns repulsed the Red Army, weakened by Stalin's purge of its top officers. Later, greatly outnumbered, Finnish forces lose the Karelian Isthmus to the Soviet Union. 400,000 refugees, unwilling to be liberated, flee their homes, moving their possessions by every possible means. Next, the Baltic states. Non-aggression pacts notwithstanding, a Russian ultimatum to Latvia opens the border to Red troops. and hordes of so-called technicians, in reality trained in Moscow agents. From Moscow comes Andrei Vyshinsky to appoint a puppet government with August Kirchenstein as prime minister. Banners and signs prepared by subversives demand admittance of Latvia into the Soviet Union. Johannes Spure of the Latvian Communist Party makes the formal request. There are no opposing votes. To the Kremlin goes Premier Kirchenstein, petitioning for admission into the Soviet Union. With Stalin are Khrushchev, Molotov, Mikoyan, and Kaganovich. Back in Latvia, behind the parades and banners, oppression. The communists have a technique for subversion outlined for every nation, for every class, for every type of political situation. Here is a blueprint for communist conquest. First, the propaganda machine goes into action. Business is nationalized, and all assets become the property of the state. Down to the last nut and bolt. This woman worked a lifetime to save 4,000 Latvian dollars. 3,000 of it is now the property of the party. And so is a month's pay from every worker. Time is taken out to sign the pledges. Farmers must join collectives in order to survive. The jails are opened, allegedly for political prisoners. But convicted felons become the new police force. Translation, criminal album. Anas Yanis, 11 sentences for felonies, released from prison June 21st, becomes inspector of police. Yanis Businskis, professional thief, serving 3 years and 6 months, is made chief of the Red Guard. Sipe Gutmanis, a felon, serving 3 years and 6 months, moves up to prefect of the 2nd Police District. August Kalmans, burglar, serving 2 years and 1 month, was promoted to chief of police of Daugavpil. Matis Botanicus, thief, serving 2 years and 1 month, is the new chief of police of Liepaja. The new constitution from Moscow guarantees freedom from unreasonable arrest. Previously respected citizens, now labeled enemies of the people, are herded into trains and deported to slave labor camps. While parents are persecuted, great care and attention is immediately focused on the children. A red scarf of communism is supposed to give the character representing the spirit of childhood control over the world. The true meaning of the red scarf of communism is evidenced by this list of 78 Latvians from all walks of life. The notation says, politically unreliable, shoot them to death. There are no trials, no appeals. A mass grave in the courtyard of the Riga city jail. More than 15,000 men, women, and children, educators, doctors, ministers, students, laborers, are executed. It's the same sad story in Estonia and Lithuania. Molotov says, the nonsensical talk about the Sovietization of the Baltic countries is only to the interest of our common enemies. Words are one thing, actions another. Communist imperialism marches on. In eastern Romania, Khrushchev and Commissar of Defense Tymoshenko supervised the Red takeover. May 1st, 1941. In Red Square, Marshal Tymoshenko entertains officers of the Axis powers. It begins to look as if Stalin and